You said that smartphones, the screens light up in the same area of your brain as opioids, cannabis, and I actually know some other things. It would be like even, a sexual relationship.
Yeah. We never think in our minds, oh, I'm going to give my child an iPad, or I'm going to give my child a phone, and this could be like a drug to them. That's not even in our mind.
No. Well, welcome to HomeWord. I am Jim Burns. I got a question for you right off the bat. How are you doing with creating a media-safe home? Do you know that at HomeWord, we are the largest provider of parenting seminars in the U.S. and probably in the world. And the number one requested seminar we have is creating a media-safe home. I mean, what's crazy about it is me or any of our speakers will be talking on helping your children grow spiritually. You know what the first question is? So what about social media? When do I give my kid a phone? All these kind of questions. And it's just remarkable because it may be the most challenging issue for parents today, or maybe the most challenging for parents ever. So today we're talking about responsible digital use in the home. And I am so fortunate to have someone that I respect greatly. And not only is she an incredible writer and an author, but she has a great podcast, which I'll give you the name about with it in a minute. But I'm so honored to have her. Her name is Arlene Pellicane, and I'm so grateful. We're in studio together.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
I remember, so my oldest is 20.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to HomeWord in the car.
Wow.
And I literally was like, before, like when he was little, like when he was a little boy. And I thought to myself, this is kind of amazing that I get to sit down with you today.
Yeah,
so it's special.
How cool.
So it's special for me.
That's neat. What I laugh about, the other day I was at the dermatologist. So I'm always at the ocean.
Yeah.
We're here in Dana Point, California, where we're doing this. So I'm at the ocean a lot. And so I have skin cancer all over my face. And the guy said, for somebody your age, and I lead over to this beautiful, like 23-year-old little nurse. And I said, I think what he's saying is I'm a really old guy.
Yeah.
So I take that. But it's a privilege to do that. And even later I was thinking I want to talk a little bit to our audience about the fact that in many ways they can be mentored by you. They can be mentored. I may never have met somebody, but they can, over the, you listen to podcasts, you listen to some people's radio shows, you read their books or whatever, and all of a sudden, you co-wrote the book Screen Kids with Gary Chapman. When I have him on the show, I say he's one of the great mentors. Well, it's not like I've spent loads and loads of time with him, but he's mentored me. My marriage is better because of Gary's writing, because of the time I've spent with Gary, and because of the sidebar conversations. We're both speaking at a American Association of Christian Counselors, and so I go grab some time with him, and I don't know if he even realizes that, but that's the same now with you, and I love, love, love what you're doing. So that's what we're talking about today, is responsible digital use in the home. And Arlene's books, besides my favorite, so that I know I'm offending some people because we've had other interviews and I love them too, but my favorite book is called Screen Kids. In fact, last Saturday I was speaking in Honolulu, and I was speaking on a student's guide to sexual integrity. But you know what the first question was? Well, what about digital use with phones and pornography and all that kind of stuff? First question, and I go, okay, 2 words, Screen Kids. Another word, Arlene Pellicane. And then Tuesday, I was on the New Life radio show, and we had a caller call, and they were in a mess, and they were letting their 13-year-old just go all over the internet and with their new phone. And I said, 2 words, Screen Kids. And so again, I'm selling your book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyway,
Thank you.
I love it. But Arlene has other books too, many others. Parent Rising, 31 Days to a Happy Husband is an interesting book.
That's my husband's favorite.
Yeah. All of us men want that. There's other books as well. She's also the host of called A Happy Home podcast. And you know what? I just listened to it this week, and it is really, really, really good. So go to that. Arlene has appeared on the Today Show. She's appeared on Fox and Friends, Focus on the Family, Wall Street Journal. So much. She's just doing a great job. She's married to James. She has 3 kids. They're now kind of college and getting above, and then she also has a high schooler, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Here's the story. Her kids grew up without video games, social media, and smartphones. And they may be the only people in America with that, but it's worked for her, and we're going to talk about that. Arlene, I'm so happy to have you.
So good to be here.
Yeah.
Yes, and that happened in Southern California in public school.
Amazing.
This whole thing
Amazing.
going to school without a device in your backpack.
Is that amazing? We have a story that we tell about our daughter Christy, because our Christy went through high school without a cell phone, and it was partly the time.
Yeah.
But she was a cheerleader at Dana Hills High School, and she was the only kid on the cheer squad who didn't have a phone, and we heard about it all the time. So the board chair of HomeWord, and he wasn't the board chair then, but he was a good friend of mine, he said, so Christy told me that she doesn't have a phone. And they kind of live around the corner. And I said, well, yeah. She goes, and you're going to let her go to Point Loma Nazarene without a phone. And I said, I mean, she can call us. She can get a hold of us. We can get a hold of her. And he goes, so you're going to let her be on a deserted road and she's going to get beaten and stabbed. And I'm like, he goes, her birthday's coming up. You need to buy her a phone. And he's just a good friend. He's kind of messing around. So I immediately go home that night and I said to my wife, I think we should get Christy a cell phone. I mean, you don't want her to be on a deserted road and get beaten and stabbed. And so we bought that phone for her. What we've laughed about, that was the most expensive phone, because then we paid for that phone all through college. And I think she snuck in a couple of other years as well. And, and went on. But it is possible
It is very funny because we get the phone for that reason.
Yeah.
Because we think, oh, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that they'll get hurt. I'm afraid they'll be left out. I'm afraid they won't be able to reach us. Like those fears are so huge.
Right.
But then you think, wait a minute. Maybe what about the fears of overuse, of bad values, of pornography, of addiction? Obviously that would be more likely today than someone getting beaten and stabbed on a deserted road. Although that sounds very compelling.
No, it was. It was, and it's thousands of dollars. Right. And she didn't understand roaming because back at that time, Christy, a little older, she didn't. You had to pay for roaming, and so her first phone bill was so ridiculously crazy.
Goodness.
We had to go have a powwow with her. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. But we are here to talk about, the whole idea of responsible digital use.
Yeah.
And you have a quote in your book, and I want you to talk about this quote because I think it's almost a theme for the book. And what's funny about it was I've read your book twice. I don't read very many books twice. And I read your book twice, and I've been using this quote, but I didn't know where I got it from. And I went, oh my goodness, I've stolen this quote from your research.
That's okay, you certainly may.
So thank
Please
you.
Do.
But here's the quote. It's by Nicholas Kardaras, who's actually an expert on brains and addiction. And this quote just blows my mind. Digital drugs may be more insidious and problematic than illicit drugs because we don't have our guard up about them. And I want you to speak to that.
Yeah, we never think in our minds, oh, I'm going to give my child an iPad or I'm going to give my child a phone and this could be like a drug to them. That's not even in our minds.
No.
We wouldn't take a 5-year-old and say like, hey, let's have you try a little beer so you know what it's like.
Sure.
Let's have you, child of mine, 10-year-old, let's vape. Like you just would never think this.
Sure. Right.
But think of a child, if they have some kind of, any kind of addiction, right? We can see that very clearly in alcohol, in drugs, and the destructive power of that. Yeah. But if your child gets addicted to something like that, they can kick that addiction by entering rehab, by having therapy, and getting away from it. But if you get attached to video gaming, to social media, you need 2 hours a day, then 4 hours a day, then 6 hours a day. Guess what? Your child gets to use that phone or that tablet for the rest of their life. They don't that doesn't just evaporate.
Right.
So it's so much more important to have the guard up to think, okay, this is something you're going to have in your pocket all your life. Yeah. So I need to think of this as a potential drug and kind of introduce it at the right time and in the right dosage so that develops correctly.
Yeah, I love that. In your book, you called it screen drugs. That was your phrase. And I just, to me, this was this aha. So I want to be nerdy for a minute. I want to talk about the brain because you brought this up. You said that smartphones, the screens light up in the same area of your brain as opioids, cannabis, and I actually know some other things. It would be like even, a sexual relationship.
Yeah.
So again, that's a pleasure.
Yes.
It brings pleasure. And of course, that is part of the addiction issue.
Yeah, to understand that this isn't just my child is disobedient or my child is like, why can't get that's right. It's like the brain, that dopamine is like, wow, I can just go on this phone and it's really easy and I get this dopamine hit of pleasure.
Yeah.
versus, in the real world, I have to do a lot of work in order to get this dopamine hit of pleasure.
Right.
But here on my phone, I can just play this little video game or watch this funny video. So it's very easy.
Yeah.
And then the brain is like, I like this dopamine. Let's go find some more.
Right.
So you're training your brain to look for that dopamine. Right. You know, I took my daughter to Knott's Berry Farm when she was like in 3rd grade. She was my roller coaster kid. So I'm like, we're going to do this thing. Yeah. So we went on Silver Bullet, which goes upside down a few times, and it was super fun. But then the ride, after the ride was done, we got stuck. They're like, we're experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by. And we were literally there for 20 minutes, just like with our little feet dangling, but in, not upside down or anything. We're totally safe. But my daughter was like, Mom, I really we got to get off this thing. Yes. And they said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to reset the ride and you're going to ride again. And that should reset the system. And everyone was like, woo, like hollering because it was a 1-hour wait. But my daughter was like, I do not want to ride again. So she rode again. We got off. She laid on the bench and she was like, I don't want to ride anything else today. I'm done.
Isn't that something?
And the brain is meant to enjoy some dopamine. Like, yay, that ride was so fun. That's great. Now let's go do something else.
Yeah.
The brain isn't supposed to woo, spike, woo, spike, woo, spike, over and over again. It's unhealthy. It's like you're taking one neuron and you're shaking it to death. And it's like, that's not what the brain is meant to do. It's meant to relax again.
Yeah.
So to realize, wait a minute, my child has way too much dopamine. Yeah. And in regular life, it's supposed to be like, oh, that's a pretty sunset, a little dopamine. Oh, look, my dog, he's so funny, a little bit of dopamine. It's just like this ebb and flow, and then it goes down a little. Oh, I got a bad score, bummer. But our kids today, they're getting these spikes of dopamine, so it goes way up, like, wow, this is so amazing. And then something bad happens. Oh, someone said something mean about me on social media, and it dips way back down. And you're thinking, why is my child so moody?
Yeah.
So irritable.
Right.
No emotional control.
Yeah.
And we have to realize, wait, this is the brain. The brain is being fed all this dopamine, and it's not equipped for that.
No, it's so good. And again, we don't know this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the day, I heard you say this on your podcast. You know, back in the day, my parents' day, they would say more doctors recommend such and such a cigarette. They didn't know it was going to cause lung cancer and all these kind of things. Today we know. This is the Wild West when it comes to brains. And yet we do understand now this dopamine drop or the dopamine rise. And again, it's not easy. And I find that even in my own life. I'm not much of we don't watch a whole lot of TV. We have a TV from way back, and Kathy wants us to buy a new one now. And I'm like, why? She goes, well, they don't even have these kind of TVs anymore. My kids are embarrassed of our TV. But we just don't watch it, right? And I do social media, but I'm not totally on it. But I find that if somebody writes to me and I look and I go, oh my goodness, that's a high school friend. I haven't seen them for a long time. Then I go check them out, and then they have a reel. And so I go to the reel, and the next thing I know, I've just wasted 20 minutes. Now, when I say wasted, sometimes it's almost relaxing because I'm getting some dopamine rise on Jim Gaffigan, the comedian, who I never watch, but then I'm totally loving this guy because it's hilarious about his kids or whatever. And if I'm doing that and I'm pretty disciplined, what about the 6-year-old, the 8-year-old, and
14-year-old?
No, exactly, definitely 14-year-old who literally they're not in control, and we thought it was just sugar. Yeah. And now we're finding it's also the digital drug, which is just crazy.
And you're really seeing statistics that are backing this up now. It used to be like, oh, maybe you're the crazy mom, you're just the old-fashioned mom. Right. But now it's like, wait a minute, if depression is up 145% in girls since 2010 and 161% in boys, what's happening? And there's so many numbers like this.
So that's what's crazy. That's why it's so hard to stop.
Yeah.
And you actually, in your book, you talk about sometimes you do have to figure out how to stop this train. That's not easy.
We think of progress as we always have to go forward, but sometimes C.S. Lewis has this beautiful quote, and I can't remember it exactly, but the gist of it is sometimes progress is going backward.
No, that's really good.
It's going back.
Yeah.
And so for families, if you think, progress is we need more video games, more social media, more phones because they're getting older, sometimes the progress is reversing.
No, it's so good.
And apologizing and saying, you know what, we are going this route and it's not a good route.
Right. And, I think one of the ways you learn that is by something you call a clarifying question. I think it is so good. Is technology bringing your family together, or is it driving your family farther apart? It's just a great line.
Yeah. It's just that simple. because we might get it because we think, oh, this will bring us together. We're going to FaceTime grandma and we'll be able to text each other and we'll send each other funny pictures. And you can do all those things. Yeah. But when the day is done, did we really spend so much more time, quality time with our children since we gave them Instagram or since we played video games? I've yet to meet one parent who says, I gave my child this video game and now the quality of our relationship is so much better. I've yet to meet this person.
No, exactly. Because a lot of parents, when you would ask that question, I'm sure that they go, they're doing this. Oh, man. Because it has gotten farther. Now, again, I mean, social media is here to stay. Gaming is here to stay. Things are here to stay. There are families who are not going to do what your family did.
Yeah.
And what I say to them is, if your kid plays a video game, at least play with them. Do something, with them. And even in the younger years, and this might be watching on screens or something, but you're watching a good, healthy show or whatever. My grandkids like VeggieTales. And so, sit with them and watch them and do that.
That's
and
a
then
different experience.
That's gathering it together.
Yes.
It's when, you see the 14-year-old who won't even, stop to have a conversation with anybody. We've got a couple of people who are not relatives but close to us. They come to our house. They stay at our house. They're in another state. And we'll say hello, and they don't look up from their screens. And it's sad, and I'm kind of sorry about it.
Yeah.
Because, again, they're not bad kids. Yes. They're just so tied into this thing. It's hard. So it's a great question. I'm going to say it again. For those of you who are listening or watching on the YouTube channel, here it goes. Is technology bringing your family together, or is it driving it farther apart? If it's bringing it together, fantastic. Keep doing whatever you're doing. It's probably not, like Arlene said. And if it's kind of driving it apart, then maybe this is the time to do a reset in the family in terms of making some decisions to create a media safe home. I want to go back to the brain, which is crazy. I'm kind of a brain nerd. People don't have any idea about that. But I did my PhD on adolescence, and so I had to study brain stuff. And so I've got a fellow brain nerd for a bit from your book anyway. You talk about positive suggestions to strengthen a child's brain, and I loved it. And really, it has nothing to do with the digital world except not using it. Right. But you have things like, have some downtime, physical exercise, unstructured play, sleep, even eating healthy foods. I really appreciate that you brought that up, because sometimes people go, well, what do we do? Well, actually, it's kind of simple, but it's not easy. So talk about the positive side to your child's brain.
Yes. What's so hopeful about this is if our problem is with technology, this is solvable.
Yeah.
Like, I can rein this in as a parent.
Right.
You have more power than you think you do. And instead you can say, oh, let's figure out what physical activity you like. For us, we had 3 kids. So my husband was always like, everyone has to do the same thing, so that we only had to drive to one thing.
Seriously.
So we did martial arts.
Yeah.
And guess what? The class was like, oh, if you have the 3 kids, we'll put the parents in for free. So we literally, my husband and I, for 3 years of our life, went to Blue Dragon 3 times a week.
Hilarious.
And we were in the kids class.
Yeah.
So we would be the 2 adults in the kids class. And we had the most fun.
I love that.
It's screen free. We had to move our bodies.
Yeah,
It was social.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're replacing the screen time with something healthy.
Oh, that's even better. And you're playing with your kids.
And you're playing with your kids. So the more you can do where you're actually with your kids versus watching your kids.
Great illustration.
Even better.
Yeah.
So whether that's doing Frisbee or music or chess or whatever it is, but you are figuring out something. You're playing baseball, volleyball, whatever. So think athletics. I mean, kids are good at this, right?
Yeah.
They move. Think music. Mm-hmm. Think art.
Yes.
Think cooking.
Yes.
Think robotics. Like, think, what does your child, and try different things so your kid can be well-rounded. And it doesn't have to be expensive. No. You can use YouTube as a digital vegetable, right? Sure. Not digital candy, but digital vegetable when you're all watching it. Like, we're going to learn how to do this thing together. Yeah. And then you're going to do it, and then you do it.
Yeah.
So what you're trying to do is like whet the appetite of your kid for other things.
No,
and then
good.
That's so good for the brain. Like, my daughter rides horses on Saturdays. We prayed. We said, Lord, we sent our daughter to horse camp for 2 weeks. And what my husband called that was, wow, we paid money so she could scoop poop for someone else, right? So he's just like, this is a great plan for them,
Right.
So we prayed, like, God, find us. There must be someone who could use a girl to help him for free,
Awesome.
And we found a mentor. And for the last 4 years out of COVID, she's been with a mentor riding horses. And so what you're doing is finding healthy alternatives.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy what the difference that'll make.
It's so good. That's so good. I mean, we need to do a whole show on that. But I really hope you will hear that in terms of you who are listeners, you who are watching on the YouTube channel, that truly it's time to do that. And the other takeaway from that is don't ever try to rob Arlene because she knows martial arts. And she doesn't look like she could nail you, but I have a feeling she could take you down. Amazing conversation today with Arlene Pellicane. We're talking about responsible digital use in the home. Her book is called Screen Kids. I already told you, I love Screen Kids. You can learn all things about Arlene. It's in our show notes. Everything about her is in our show notes, but also arlenepellicane.com is where to get this. And by the way, she just has a great podcast. So I just listened to one of the podcasts, and it's wonderful. You can tell by her personality and who she is. She just does a great job. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
I'm Erin Mashaw, and I want to invite you into an honest conversation about one of life's most awkward yet important topics, sex.
Conversations about sex can bring up all kinds of weird emotions, not the least of which is awkward. But that's not a reason to avoid the topic altogether.
So, if everybody's doing it, then what's the big deal?
Where do you go with your questions? There are lots of voices telling you who you are, how to dress, what to think, how to feel. So how do we know what to listen to? Who can we trust to guide us?
When we treat others with radical respect, we honor God. We make our lives and relationships better, and we reflect God's love to the world all around us.
Now, I know you might be thinking, what? I don't need guardrails. I have good intentions, but what if intention isn't enough?
And as you think about the path from where you are now to where you want to be, who are the friends that can help you get there?
You'll hear personal stories, helpful advice, and truth from the Bible about how to make wise choices when it comes to love, sex, and dating.
Imagine being able to look back on this stage of your life without regrets about the way you handled relationships. You're not going to get there by accident. You're going to have to decide in advance what guardrails to put in place to get to where you want to be.
Join us for a student's guide to sexual integrity.
Welcome back. I'm Jim Burns, and we're talking today about responsible digital use in the home. Who doesn't want that and who does not need that? And I know this could be a little bit of shame and guilt. We're not trying to put that on you, but again, what we're talking about is the fact that it is a digital drug, and you have to look at it as a drug, and a lot of people are addicted. I've said this several times on this podcast already, but I was speaking in Richmond, Virginia, and asked kids, how many of you think it's possible to be addicted to social media, to the digital world? I was talking to 800 kids, and all of them raised their hand. All 800. I mean, I didn't see one kid. And then I said, how many of you are addicted? And 2 put their hands down, right? So this is crazy, right? And I loved what you did in this. And I want to walk through your suggestions for digital use with kids at kind of each phase. You're not big on kids even looking at digital 0 to 18 months or even up to 2 years. Yeah. And again, you have some backing for that too.
Yeah, well, you think of your pediatrician and the AAP, they'll say, this is what you should do. So really no screens. From birth to 2, except for FaceTiming. You can do that. FaceTime grandma, because guess what? That's a real person, synchronous, in the same time as you, responding to baby. So that's fine.
No, I love that.
FaceTime away, that's lovely. Yeah. Just don't put her right in front of the TV.
Yeah, it's funny. Our kids are, I'm fortunate enough to have all of my 3 daughters and their husbands, and 2 of them have children. And we are the godparents of a dog as well. But we can do FaceTime with the kids in LA. They live in LA, and so we can do FaceTime with 2 of them. And I love it because they don't get the difference. I mean, these are littler kids, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and they want to touch the screen. They want to kiss the screen. And then, the 4-year-old is like, oh, hi. And then poof, he's gone. So he's not as good as he used to be. Yeah. The other one is now enamored with us. But, and here we are looking on our phone. It's like the YouTube videos. Here's Grandma and Grandpa, Jim and Kathy going, well, hi, boo, 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 la, 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 looking really crazy.
And really, as you go through these ages, the thing is we, as the parents, we can show like what's normal. Yeah. So sometimes we think, well, how can I do that? Like, how am I going to get through the day without giving my 3-year-old or 4-year-old this thing? Yeah. But if you believe it,
Yes.
and you are like, oh, it's normal for us
Right.
not to have those things,
Right.
but you have a book or you have your Lovey or
Right,
your
right.
teddy bear or you have your trucks, like your kid will adapt to
Oh
that.
no, they adapt.
Yeah.
They don't know the difference. You know, the phrase I use is self-soothing, because I think a lot of times as parents, the kid's upset, and if you put Thomas the Train in front of a 1.5-year-old,
Right, that's
they're
gonna
go,
do it.
And then they're going to go, whoa, like this. So it worked.
Yes.
And so, you know, we've been at family meals where our grandkids, the parents, after a while, they're acting up. They've already eaten, and you know, it's adults. What are we doing? We're at a dinner place. I mean, you know, they're not. You can't expect them to be like marvelous. And they have their toys in front of them, but
Right.
now they're going to move the toys. They put whatever it is, Veggie Tales, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, good stuff, not horrible stuff.
Yeah.
And it works. The problem is it does work.
Right.
So what happens is we're in life is messy. We're all, going crazy and it's too busy. And so mom or dad and sometimes dads do it worse than moms, but they put it in front of the kid just to calm them down so you can get dinner or whatever. When we do that all the time, they were crying and now they're not. They're now not being, they don't know how to self-soothe.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing. Now, what do you think about kids who are more the 2 to 5 range?
Yeah, so they will say, watch the American Academy of Pediatrics, right? So 1 hour or less, but co-viewing, like with you.
Right.
And we always kind of laugh at this because what mom or dad says, oh, great, I have an hour. Here's Thomas the Train. Let me sit down and watch with you. Like, nobody's going to do this.
Right.
So we get that. So maybe it's you watch with them sometime.
Yeah.
Maybe you're in the room enough that you know it's happening, so you can talk about that later. Like, oh, remember in the episode when this happened? That was funny, wasn't it? So those kinds of things, making it as interactive with a person as possible is what you're going for. But really do set those limits in your mind. And if you're at 5 hours right now, maybe you're going to go to 4 hours.
Exactly.
If you're at 2 hours, maybe you come to 1.
Yeah.
And not to feel that peer pressure of everyone else is watching these videos. What if my child's stupid because they don't watch these videos? No, your child is going to be very smart because they're talking to you.
No, exactly. Or if they're reading. I mean, their brain, what you say in the book is that you got to be careful of even brain development at these younger years. And, and I find that I'm the grandpas and grandmas, you can do this. I mean, I have a subscription to something called Mr. Phil, and it's the guy who did Veggie Tales. He's actually a friend. And the 2 kids, my 2 grandkids who live by us, we all sit on this thing. I sit in the middle, and I watch Mr. Phil, where it's goofy. But sometimes they'll want to go play, and I'm wait, we need to finish this because I want to see what happened to David and Goliath or whatever. Or other times I have fallen asleep. Literally, they're like, Papa Jay, wake up. Oh, sorry about that. But it's that couch, that chair that we have is a special thing sometimes. Let's talk about kind of the 6 to 10 and then on to the teen years. Now they're getting media use even in school.
Yeah.
So they're coming with their tablets or whatever, or they've been given tablets. What do you suggest to them? And I don't want to miss that you said 1 hour. And I get it. You had lots of grace. 5 hours, we moved to 4, et cetera. But really, if you look at authorities, they're saying like 1 hour.
Yeah.
We're way out of that in terms of where the world is. But talk about, 6 to 10 and then teens.
Yeah, and really that 6 to 10 period, this is that clip of time where they still want to be with you as a parent.
Right.
Like they're like, Mommy, Daddy, let's go do something. Let's talk to you. So you really want to take advantage of this.
Right.
Versus, if you slide into what's average, they're going to be on a device 6 hours a day for entertainment.
Yep.
An hour in the morning and 3 hours in this time and then 1 hour before bed. And before you know it, they've spent a lot of time. So again, it's funny. The American Academy of Pediatrics, they used to say 2 hours or less.
Yeah.
And many times you'll read things and they'll say set limits. They kind of keep it more general. But they have done a study of the National Institute of Health have done a study. And imagine this, that over 10,000 kids, what they find is 2 hours or less is okay. of amusing entertainment a day. And for many of you, you might think, wow, that's way too much, like 2 hours a day, that's a lot. But there's others of you that you'll think 2 hours a day, how will we ever get to my kid being on games or social media or watching Netflix for 2 hours or less a day? But that is what they find would be healthy is 2 hours or less a day. Once you start pushing more than that, then you're looking at mental health issues. You're looking at, because think of it, they're not moving. You're sitting stock
obesity
still,
issues.
looking at a thing. So you have physical issues, you have mental issues, you have lack of being with people. So those things are really important. In 2003, talking about the teenagers now, a 15-year-old would spend 150 minutes a day with friends. So 2.5 hours hanging out with friends, you know. But today, they're spending 40 minutes or less in person with friends. And you see, like, why are people so sad? Well, they're not with other people.
No, they're not.
They're just sitting with their device.
They're not even outside.
So the same thing is true with teenagers. If you can get them 2 hours or less, that's really what you're aiming for. So what this really means for teens is modeling it yourself, spending good time with them. So you have a relationship that you can talk about these kinds of things. And then kind of awaken them to friends and sports and causes and activities and service that they like. So that they realize, oh, I don't want to spend all these hours. They did a recent survey, the BBC, this shocked me, that they asked 13 to 18-year-olds, and the BBC found that 23% said that people should ban smartphones under 16.
Amazing.
23% of teenagers said, yeah, we agree, you should ban these things for people under 16. 35% said that social media should be banned. I couldn't believe this. I'm like, kids themselves are telling us. So really, what this, I believe, moment says to parents is this is your time to rise. Like people are catching that, you know what? Like for instance, social media, many of them were asked if social media wasn't a thing, right? Would you want to give it up? Yes. They all say yes, but it's just we can't because our friends are here and we can't. We don't know how to function without it. But it's kind of like they said, imagine the refrigerator being invented. We wouldn't say like, most of us would say, I wish we didn't have this thing. We don't really, you don't need the, no one would ever say that.
No.
But here social media has been invented. But many of us would say, we'd like to put that thing back. We don't really see that the uses were better for us.
It's amazing that they use it, but they do say, I wish I didn't. It's saying something. And they know something that actually some of the experts said. I remember in your book, you quoted Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs, here he created the iPad, the tablet. I mean, this guy's brilliant. And they ask, well, how do you monitor this with your kids? And he goes, oh, my kids, they don't watch anything. They don't use an iPad.
They don't have a tablet.
Whoa.
Right.
So what does he know? What does Bill Gates know about phone when Bill Gates said, I don't let my kids have phones early,
he
things
waited
like
till
that.
high school.
It's really interesting. And it's funny because we're kind of bagging on this, saying negative things, but the truth is that this could be so helpful to families. What do we want to do? We want to change the trajectory of how we do families. At HomeWord, we want to help families succeed. You want to do that. And yet sometimes we have to gain knowledge because this is something we didn't know. My mom and dad never had to worry about this. I remember the day I showed my dad this thing called the World Wide Web Internet. And he's like, wow. Well, he was old enough where he was like, I'm never going to use this thing. I would always have to, he'd always hand me when he got a cell phone, he would go like, "Can you program this for me? I don't have any idea what's going on here," and we're in that world again. And yet, a lot of us are also addicted. And you did a chapter on this, and you have other chapters. I just recommend that people go to the book, Screen Kids, buy the book. But you have a chapter on us, and HomeWord. We do something called the Culture Update, and it's funny, I'm pulling out my phone. This is our culture update for today. Parents' excessive smartphone use could harm children's mental health. So this isn't just a kid thing. Some of us parents are addicted with all the same issues and maybe worse in terms of time. Some people say that parents are online more than the kids. Speak to the person who, we're going to meddle in their life for just a minute, but speak to the person who wants a healthy family more than anything else, and yet maybe they're addicted.
There's a question you can ask your kids or your spouse. Do you ever feel like I'm on my phone too much? Or, do you feel like you're competing with my phone? If there was something you could tell me and I wouldn't get mad, what would
Right.
you say?
Right.
And you have to be in the right space, right? To
Right.
receive this,
Sure.
you have to
Sure.
want this. But a lot of it, like my daughter who just graduated from public high school will say, Mom, why does your generation let my generation just waste their whole childhood and being a teen on their phone? Why does your generation let us do that?
Yeah.
And a lot of it is not the kids, it's the parents. Like, we do not want to deal with that. We want to come home from work and
Yeah.
we want to veg out and
Yeah.
we want to just disappear and we
Yeah.
don't want to deal with the kids. We don't want to deal with our spouse. So we
Right.
just pretend
So good.
like we're checking emails. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm hugging you. Okay, please load that, listener, as I'm
Right.
telling you this. So a lot of it is our repentance of saying, Lord, help me. Like,
Right.
I am counting on this thing too much. My eyes should be on you, not
Yes,
on this
so good.
shiny thing. And maybe it looks like, child of mine,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've been looking at my phone way too much. As you know, it's really kind of addictive and easy to use.
Sure.
So I'm going to go on a social media fast for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
child of mine. Why don't we all do that as a family?
family.
Or I'm going to do, like, on
Yeah.
Sundays, I'm not going to check it except for like emergency phone
Yeah, I
calls,
love
whatever. Like, have something specific that
Yeah.
you're saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That I haven't been all in about this.
Yeah.
And here's something we're going to do together
So good.
to get better. Because what's going to happen is you'll listen to this, you'll think, oh, we need to change, but you won't do anything. But if you say, we're going to get that mealtime back, we're
Right.
going to take the phones, put them away, and we're going to start having dinner together.
Yeah.
And then you win. And then
Yeah.
you'll say, let's get Sundays back.
Yeah.
Let's make that a day of rest. And when we're going to go out to ice cream together. And that's what we're going to do every Sunday.
Yeah.
Great. Now let's take back the weeknights. Now we're going to start shutting things down at 9 o'clock. Just take it chunk by
Love it.
chunk, bring it back, but get a win. Because if
Yeah.
you feel like you're losing, you're going to give up. You'll just
So
be like,
good.
this doesn't work. It's impossible. But if you say, all we're going to do is collect the phones at night and we're
Right.
just going to get that habit down for the next 6 months
Yeah.
and just nail it and get it and do it and be like concrete and set your mind on it and do it. So just ask God, like, what's that one thing we can do to start and then build? But it does begin with us.
Yeah.
Like, because they did the survey of 6,000 kids across all these different countries. What's your parents' worst habit? And the number one worst habit was, my parent is on their cell phone too
Wow.
much. Highest in Brazil, which reported 87% of those kids said that's my parents' worst
Right.
habit, being on the phone.
Wow. Amazing, amazing. Arlene, you are my resident expert. Thank you. This time has gone by so fast, but I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate all that you do. And I just want to thank you for being with us. I've got to have you back on because I want to ask more questions. So you got to come back.
I will come back. Thank you.
Yay. ArlenePellicane.com is where you can go. It's also all the information is in our show notes. Go buy that book. I mean, this is powerful. I'm going to suggest to you, you know someone else, you know a family member, you can send this on, okay? And so all you got to do is go to the HomeWord website, or you can go to HomeWord YouTube channel, and you can send this on to somebody else who needs to hear it. And you don't have to do it preachy, okay? Grandparents, I know we got some grandparents who listen. Please do not go, you need to hear this. Just simply say, I loved this conversation, and then pass it on, because it's life changing. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to find ourselves in trouble. I was thinking about a scripture that says, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. Paul said that to Timothy. Discipline. And it's actually an athletic term. You know what? When it comes to this, we're going to need some discipline. And actually, that word discipline, there's a couple of Greek words that kind of say the same thing. This one is actually an athletic type discipline. That's the phrase he used. So we got to make this happen. And when she said, do it together, that's a great thing, because all of us could use some help and work on that. So don't feel bad. Okay, I loved what she did, because her kids didn't even have any of this stuff, and yet she's saying, if you have 5 hours, go to 4 hours, okay? But you got to monitor this, okay? It's crazy. It's for too many of us, it's out of control. The other thing I would say, and I mentioned it earlier, is make sure that you find mentors in this area. So I'm kind of pointing at her. You can see it on the YouTube channel. You can see her beautiful face and life. But the point I'm saying is, find mentors, find the Arlenes who can walk with you through it. Now, she's not going to be able to spend time with all the people who listen to her podcast or read her books, hear her speak. But, find those people. I do. I have mentors. I have mentors who live by us. Kathy and I weren't raised in a Christian home, so as much as we love our parents and honor our parents, we kind of had to learn about marriage and parenting from somebody else, right? So there's people I meet with for a meal, and we'll have a list. And Kathy and I just had with a couple who's in their 80s, and they're beautiful people, amazing people, actually. And we hang out with them. We call them mentors. I don't even know if they realize we do, but we always have, questions for them. Some of my mentors I met after they died, which means I read their books. Okay, C.S. Lewis. Arlene mentioned C.S. Lewis. I've read every one of his books. I'm a better Christ follower because I know C.S. Lewis. Did I ever have, a conversation with him? No, but I feel like I have because of his books and others. And then also make sure that you find people who are doing the podcast, who are writing. They're not doing this to get rich. Nobody is. So as people have said to me at times, you know what, you kind of mentored me through this time. And I go, wait, I didn't even know you. But it was because of a book. It was because of the podcast. It was because of something else. Find mentors who can help you, because we need to have people come alongside of us. And the Bible says, where there is no counsel, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And so think of this podcast as that for you. Think of what Arlene is doing as, giving and bringing wise counsel. Okay, are we good? Listen, until next time, thanks for being with us. And we're going to have Arlene back, and we're going to talk about the top questions that she gets about screen time, because you probably have some questions as well. We'll see you next time.